My favorite game, Nostalgia, by Harold McAleer. The best game in the world? Is it bridge? Chess? Monopoly? Hardly. For my money, it's La Morra, the Italian finger game, hands down. Pardon the pun. It is no doubt the finest of games and proved a most valuable part of my early street education. Less often now, but whenever I hear the familiar cadences, it brings back the sights and sounds of a warm Sunday afternoon in Everett, Massachusetts, in the early 40s. In front of Cassie's drugstore on Ferry Street, there was a little L-shaped corner between the front of the drugstore and a cement wall supporting the steps of the house next door, where Al Shepard lived. And the Italian guys from the neighborhood would gather there on their day off to shoot the breeze and play Morra, the Italian finger game. There was Sonny Fagioni's hefty uncle, George, from Arlington Street, with his resounding cry of "Wotto!" and his brother, a small skinny guy with thick Coke bottle eyeglasses. There was Big Nick, a heavy-set happy guy with his wet and sibilant "Say ye!" There were the two Shula brothers, spelled C-I-U-L-L-A, but pronounced Shula, Sicilian fishermen from Florence Street. One was Frank, a well-built, good-looking guy. The other was stoop-shouldered Tony, somewhat scrawny but wiry, and with the slight hunchback of many Sicilians. He had a strange lisp which showed up often in the Italian word key, whereas the other guys would pronounce it key, C-H-I. He would slur it with a sound from the back of his teeth, somewhat like the German ch, but less guttural and more sibilant. Not quite a ch and not quite a sh, but somewhere in between, as if it began with an X. Put on a wide grin, clamp your teeth tight, and try to say cheese. That's what he sounded like. I can still hear him as he threw out his fingers with a flourish and shouted, "Ci bella cinque!" The best I can do phonetically is "Ci bella cinque," to make a 5-point. He always greeted someone with, "Hi there, fatter than me." Characters all, and I miss 'em. But back to the game. The game is simple and requires no implements but your hands and some dexterity. It can be played by 2 or more people. In the usual 2-man duel, you set the number of points for a game, typically 3 or 5. You and your opponent simultaneously throw out one hand, usually the right, with some fingers extended, and shout out your guess of the total count using Italian numbers. The rules are easy. You can each throw from 1 to 5 fingers. Even a closed fist counts as 1, so that the total count can range from 2 to 10. If a person guesses the right total, he wins a point and keeps score by raising a finger on his other hand and keeping it up. He adds to it as he scores more points. If both guess the right total, it's a tie and no point is scored. If no one is right, no point is scored. The first player to reach the 5 points, or the 3, as shown by his upraised finger, wins the game. It's not so much a thinking game as a sensing game, a feeling game. You must play rapidly and effortlessly with smooth, coordinated motion and lose no time on indecision. You keep your voice musical so that to onlookers it looks and sounds like a joyous song and dance. You always could tell when the boys were playing because you could hear the sounds from a distance. Indistinct singing until you got closer and you could see the bodies bobbing up and down and hear the words and the rhythm. The beauty of the game is in the nuances, the stance, the gestures, the language, the inflection. Each player develops his own style, his own song and dance. Of course, you could play it in English, but it's just not the same. It needs the smooth, round, operatic enunciation of the Italian numbers, each pronounced with 2 long syllables, the last one dragged out, all except for the crisp tre, or the various ways of indicating 10. Diece is not used, ranging from the explosive boom with your open hand extended to the triumphant tutti quanti. And stance and gestures are important psychologically, not only for their effect on your opponent, but also on yourself. You must project extreme confidence as you stand, legs apart and leaning forward, rubbing your closed right fist in your open left palm, staring directly into your opponent's eyes, either with a sneer of cold command or the subtle Mona Lisa smile of a man who knows what will happen. And magic happens. To the technical purist, the result should be purely random. Sei, 6, should be the most likely point, and due and boom the least. And all players should score evenly over time. But it just isn't so. A good player remains a good player. He has the ability to read his opponent's next throw, either from subtle body language, clues learned from experience, or by extrasensory influence. I don't know. I only know that there are consistently good players and consistently bad ones. Of course, treachery is sometimes attempted, as with Tony Schuler's long preamble to his actual numerical selection, in the hopes of glimpsing his opponent's throw before committing himself. But such ploys are easily detected and seldom successful, and are disdained by the true aficionados. There's no such thing as a good loser in Morra. There's not even a good winner. For in this elemental battle, a literal version of hand-to-hand combat, the winner is triumphant and unforgiving in his arrogance, and the loser is humiliated and abject in his total defeat. Nothing can equal the heady feeling of superiority as you see your winning point coming, even before the fingers have stabilized and the shouts have echoed. You lift your left hand in violent victory and drive your right hand forward again in emphasis, while extending the last syllable of your winning call in a version of today's yes. Then you turn with a sneer to accept the plaudits of the onlookers, while your opponent shrinks and sags like a balloon with the air escaping and skulks off to lick his wounds. As I grew older and left the ranks of the little kids to be a teenager, I became a pretty good player, with a smooth bobbing and weaving style and a constant stream of patter. I didn't play much as I grew older until later, at General Radio in Concord. After many years away from the game, I met someone who also knew how to play. My engineering office was opposite the drafting department, and when the problems of design got overwhelming several times a day, I would sneak over to drafting and challenge Sal Giliberto from Boston's Old West End to a quick 3 points. I would beat him more often than not, and with only 5 or 6 throws. We got his fellow draftsmen, Henry Sterling and Bob Parsons, to learn the game, and the halls would resound with our quick sessions. I suspect that these occurrences may have contributed to Sal's later dismissal, and my promotion to manager in another building. I also remember many a Friday night at Howard Johnson's, where I would challenge Frank Olivetto, the bartender, to a quick 5 points, with Freddie Assad, the weird welder, waiting to take on the winner. We would often play with Nick Massey, a roofer, and Chucky Green from the bank, as they stopped for a quick pop after work. That was many years ago. The game leaves good memories. But the best memories are the oldest, and in my mind's eye I can still see that boisterous crew, huddled outside Cassie's on a warm Sunday. I see the heads bobbing up and down, the shirts coming off in the heat, the old-fashioned strapped undershirts and the sweaty arms and necks and the beefy shoulders. I can hear George again as he makes his favorite 8-point, and that lovely sound now comes rolling down the decades. Whoa-to! Oh, play on, you grinning, grunting gang of guineas. I'll never forget you. And now a poem, La Morra. And you can bet they're playing yet at that drugstore in the sky, where there's never a Monday morning and our youth will never die. And the sounds of their play can be heard all the way from Nichols Street to High, till the echoes fade in the distance like a streetcar passing by. And the Schulers sweat and their buddies bet on the twinkle in George's eye as the points roll on through that endless dawn in the good, great by and by. George's feet get set and his palms are wet, the twinkle leaves his eye, and the look on his face grows solemn as he lets his fingers fly. He cries out, 8! And all his weight is forward on his toes, and Tony calls for a 7, with a smile of sweet suppose. A hush ensues as the boys peruse the total displayed before. And there in the center of all that counts is the sight of a 4 plus 4. George smiles once more as the hush turns roar, and he thrusts his left hand high, then bows to the crowd's admiration, while Tony sags with a sigh. And you can bet they're playing yet at that drugstore in the sky, where there's never a Monday morning, and our youth will never die, and the sounds of their play can be heard all the way from Nichols Street to High, as the hours roll by to that lullaby at that drugstore in the sky. Oh, play on through that endless dawn. I'll be with you soon enough. You grinning gang of Goombas, wait till I show my stuff. And then we'll see who the champ will be at that drugstore in the sky, where there's never a Monday morning and our youth will never die.